Okay, let's get started on our third session of the day. We are going to be talking about, I called it editing best practices. Oh, this is just some things that I have found over the years that customers sometimes don't know about these little minutiae or settings to make it quicker and easier to do things. First thing we're going to talk about is the FIPS code that is on the beginning of a lot of the layers you'll see. So if we look in our layer list here, layer settings, you'll see the file name column. You'll see down through here our different layers has the FIPS code, the 8675309. But you'll see there's one that isn't that. And the reason I like to have all my FIPS codes be the same, assuming they're all from the same county, what that FIPS code is a federal ID number for like the county or community. So it could be your municipality, it could be your county. So like this section is actually from my home county of Sullivan County. So you'll see that the section is 18153. So if we hit add layer and add an existing layer, the reason it's nice to have your FIPS code set up is if we had a layer in here without a FIPS code, it would be down here at the bottom alphabetically. So that's where having things alphabetical that way is important. And that's where you'll see the sections up here. That's from Sullivan County. So it's 18 is the state, 153 is the county. So that tells me what county that came from. I basically modeled my Corey County off of my home county just because I have that data handy. The idea is all these other FIPS codes are right next to each other, so it makes them alphabetical, easy to see in the different lists. The other thing on FIPS codes, if you did want to change a FIPS code and it's already uploaded to sync, you need to call us. We need to change it on our side. It can't be, it's not something you want to rename. And then whenever you go to sync, you're going to get a this file's deleted type error in sync if you go to change anything. But let's say this is a brand new layer, or this is a layer that I've imported from from another source, and I wanted to change the FIPS code to be my FIPS code to match my other data because I'm bringing it into my map. I want everything to be the same, so we can just change that file name from right here in the layer settings. If the layer's locked, it won't actually let you click. So like down here, Community Gardens, if I try to click in here, you'll see it's grayed out, the file name. But if we go to our sections, go to our file name, and we can clear out the other, and then we can do 8675309. And okay, and that'll update it there. And then if we do like our add layer, that existing layer, you'll see that it's no longer here at the top. It's all the way down here. So that just helps everything be alphabetical. It also helps you identify where data comes from. So if you have neighboring county data and your home county data, they're going to have two different FIPS code. That helps you just better identify between the two data sets, which one is your home parcels, which one is your neighboring county parcels. So the FIPS codes are super helpful. To set those automatically when you create a new layer, like if we create a new layer right now, and I'm just going to call it testing and hit OK. And you'll see the name will automatically add the FIPS code to the beginning. So if you want to be able to set that up, if your map's not already doing that, that is up here under setup and then map settings. And that is set right here, file, layer file name prefix. So that's where you can change that to something to match your FIPS code. If you're a municipality and you had a copy of the county map, your FIPS code may be the county FIPS code, and you might want to change it to your municipality's FIPS code. If you need help looking that up, you can probably just search Google to find it. But if you need help looking it up, we can help you look that up and help set that up for you in your layer. So FIPS codes are important. Just try to keep things organized. Try to be able to, if you shared your data with a neighboring county, it would help them know that the data came from you. Also, it helps prevent duplicate layer names. So if we go back to our existing layer, if we had multiple parcel layers from multiple counties in here, if they were all just called parcels.tml, they would just want to override each other. But if you have the FIPS code, that helps you be able to have the three layers, be able to identify which one is which, and be able to all add them to the map easily. So the other thing on layers is it's important to spell things out and to have things have a name that is useful, not just for you, but for the end user that may or may not be in your position. So they maybe don't know the acronyms that you use, or they may not understand if, like, let's say a good example is this water valves. If this was just called valves, and there's two parts to naming. There's the layer name in this layer column and the file name. So let's say this just said valves. And let's say you have a gas, a water, and a electric layer. You're not going to have electric valves. That's not what they're called. They're called switches. But the valve in gas and water are going to be the same name. So if you just have valves, whenever a customer adds a layer to their map, and it doesn't have water valves in the file name, they're not going to know which group that is. And you can see I have my layers categorized here. So I could easily have just lines, valves, I did click there, lines, valves, hydrants, and meters. And because my map has this categorized, I can clearly tell where these layers, what type of utility this is. When a customer adds these layers, they aren't going to get this category. That's something you set up after you've added the layer to your map. So if we remove the lines and the meters, just to show, we collapse all these down, just to kind of show how, they're going to open their map up and they're going to like, hey, I hear that there's water lines and meters to add. I'm going to hit add existing. And then we are going to find so the nice thing is I've named them with a full name. So water lines and water meters. Nice thing is you can select two layers at once to add them to your map at the same time. So you hit open. And now those are both added to my map. And you'll see they're here at the bottom. They're not up in my category. So if they don't have any category set up and they start adding layers, they're just going to have all these layers showing up. To set up your category, you can right click and categorize layer, or the more and categorize layer. But if you already have a category, you can just open it up and then drag these in. So that's what's important about naming these. And the reason it's important to name them is whenever we get to the next little piece, we're going to save the settings to the layer. So we're actually going to have water valves, water lines. And you see whenever I added the meters and lines, it actually came in as water meters and water lines. And that's something I saved to the layer to make sure that it actually had that data. So this valves, I'm going to do a save settings to layer on this one. And that is under the more or the right click to get to this more. So we're going to hit yes and okay. That's basically saying, is it okay to lock the layer? I hit yes. And then the next one is like, hey, I'm going to save these settings. Okay. So now we've saved those. If I remove that layer, actually, I'm going to go ahead and put water valves here. So you'll see I have water valves here. So that's what my setting should be. I can do a file save. Everything's there. If I remove this layer and add it back to my map, you'll see it just comes in as valves. So if instead we would put water, capitalize that W, save settings to layer. Is it okay to lock? Yes. Display settings been saved. So now if we remove, you know what? I didn't hit apply when I did my water. I hit apply. There we go. Now we can save our settings to layer. Yes. Okay. So again, we'll do the file save. We'll remove that layer. Add it back. And water valves. And you'll see it comes in as water valves. So that's something to saving settings to layer. And that's kind of what we're going to go into next. One more thing on layer names. I prefer, and normally it's best practice, not to put dates on anything unless they're an archive layer. So most of your end users, you have to look at it as you are presenting data for other people to use a lot of times as an editor. If you have like a floodplain layer, people will expect the floodplain layer they're looking at as being the most recent one. And then let's say you want to have one from last year or 10 years ago to be able to see where it changed. You would have that one dated as maybe floodplain 2016. And then the current one would just be floodplains. And the reason that is most of the time people are just going to want the newest, best data. And having the date in there, whenever they go to sync, they're going to just expect that layer to keep updating moving forward. If you change that, like if you every time you have a new floodplain, let's say every 3 years you get a new floodplain, like the Indiana DNR, sometimes those are changing monthly. If every time you change that, put a new date and time or whatever stamp on there, they're going to have to remove the old layer and add the new layer to see that. Where it's best just to continually update the same layer. And if you need an archive of that layer, like maybe your parcels, maybe once a year, which is not a bad idea, once a year to make a backup of your parcel layer. And then you can have, parcels 2015, parcels 2014, 2023 to be able to go back to and look at those different years. But on the normal parcel layer that everybody's going to use, they're just going to expect it to be called parcels.tml. They're not going to be looking for that parcels 2026. So then the next year, they're going to have to remove the 2026 and add 2027. So one thing, try to avoid dates, especially in the file name, because that's what sync is using to synchronize those down. The layer name, it kind of affects people a little less, but it's still, in my opinion, just kind of a pet peeve to see dates on something that is going to be just rolling updates going forward. So like your parcels, your addresses, things like that. An archive layer is fine to having a date, but most of your users aren't going to be using those archive layers. You may not even have those archive layers on sync in a group that everybody accesses. It may be in a private group just for like the auditor may have a parcels archive group that we can set up for you to keep those backed up. So the save settings to layer, there's a couple of different things that you kind of want to think about whenever you set things up. My biggest thing is I tell people to either have the layer off or set to auto with a min and max range that makes sense for a user. The water valves, water lines, whenever you have let's say you have a whole city covered in those, you have it set to on, someone adds it to their layer, and then they just get a sea of blue circles all over the map. And maybe they just want to be able to see that data periodically. It's nice to start that off as off or auto for them. Auto is not so bad once you're zoomed in, and that's where normally I would set that at 0.5 miles or smaller for water valve features like that for people. You can always, as the editor, use it in the on position. Maybe you want to see them at more zoom levels, but your general users don't want their map covered in a bunch of blue circles, possibly, or the blue lines for all the water lines. Same thing with on your base map, like your parcels. You probably don't want those to be forced to on, so then whenever they open their map for the first time, it has to draw all those squares. Your addresses, same thing. It's a whole bunch of little points that are going to display. Most of the time, parcels and addresses, I suggest having those set to auto. And then whenever you are setting up the layer initially, that's when you'll do a save settings to layer. The opacity. So if we had the zip codes, if I had the opacity set to on, and it's white right now, and I add the zip code layer to my map right now, let's say, and that's what I had the settings saved, it would come in and just blank everything out white. And I would be zooming in and out and be like, well, why is my aerial photography flashing? And then it goes white. That's because the zip codes is covering everything up. And that's where either the opacity should be set to something that's useful. So maybe about 100. So it would just shade everything white. And you can see how my garden and my the daycare layers that way. That's kind of you're helping your end user have a better map experience. You're also preventing them from maybe covering up data and they can't see because it's all covered in white. Kind of actually saves me a phone call if you set the opacity on this big, zip codes are going to cover the whole county. So you don't want that to be shaded in solid. You want opacity, or a lot of times for a lot of layers, just an outline is all you really need. So that's where the section lines, You could make the section lines shade in if you wanted, but normally the line is all you really need to be able to see. Same thing with like municipalities. Sometimes those will be shaded, and that's where you can use this auto. So at like 25 range, it's shaded, and then but at like 0.5, the shading goes off. Excuse me. The so right now you can see it's off. We zoom out just a little bit, and up. That's not a big enough zip code. Help if I turn the color back on. That's the problem. So go back to max. So if we zoom out just a little bit, you'll see it's still not shaded. Zoom out a little bit more, and then it shades. And I just made a small zip code area for today's demo, but you can see how that will change as you zoom in and out. So we scroll in slowly. We'll scroll in, scroll in, scroll in, and then it goes away. So that's something nice you can do for some of your layers that maybe you want them to be able to see at max view, or you want them to see at that 5 mile range. And then once they get in a little closer, they can probably go away. Like your municipality boundaries, like the shading on those can be kind of annoying when you're zoomed in close because you want to be able to see the aerial photography really clear. But at a zoomed out point, it's nice to see that shaded area just to kind of make it pop out a little better. Good practices on your opacity is that, like, 50 to 100 is kind of what I always tell people I like. You can go darker, you can go lighter. If you go all the way down to 0, if you instead of hitting none, all that is just a penalty on the map loading because it actually loads that at 0. So it's best not to use 0. It'd be better just to go to none instead of 0, or to set it to something that's actually going to shade, that type of setting. So that's where we have this set to auto 25 and 5. We can do a save settings to layer. It's going to ask if I want to lock it, and yes, and okay. So now whenever I go to add this to sync, let's say this is a brand new layer I've created, I want to add it to sync. Whenever someone adds that to their map, it'll be come in as the exact settings that I've decided make the most sense for them. Same thing for like the labeling. So labeling is something you can control from that initial add. Once they've added it to their map, though, they can change almost any of these settings, and you can affect them from afar. There is a button, though, to help them load. Let's say you said, hey, I've color coded my zoning. So you could do like a classify here. And feature name. So you can see we have 2 zip codes in my area that I've created. If you wanted them to be able to see that change, if they click on the actual file name, and let me unlock the layer, you can hit this apply TML settings, and that will actually load the settings that are in the layer. So then once they have synced the layer back down, you've saved settings to layer, you've synced it up, they've synced it down, they can hit this button, and that'll apply those settings. I think you do have to leave the thing, but you'll see the zip codes now are no longer classified. So that loaded those out of the layer for me. And you can see the auto was set. So we can like turn that to on. We can change this to something like pink, and we can change this to something like dark red. And you can see it shades it in. We come in here, we can apply TML and hit close, and it goes back to the setting that's saved in the layer. So that's something you can do for your users if you're trying to do that classify. Maybe you don't have all the data in at the time, and later that's there. You can say, hey, hit this button, it'll load the settings, and they can just do a file save, and that'll be saved into their TGM. The TGM file, like we alluded to in one of the other sessions up here, that's where all these settings are saved. I always kind of tell people it's kind of like a Word document or something like that, where all your display settings are there, but the data is actually coming out of all these little TML files. The other thing you can set up to help your users is your geocoding. So the geocoding is this search suggestion up here at the top. So if we go to addresses, and let's say we have 2 address layers, maybe a county address layer and a city address layer, I'm going to just add city behind here in parentheses. And to make this show up right now, like if I would save, reload the map, it would rebuild this. But this rebuild search index will rebuild our index for us of any of the files. So we're going to do that. So now whenever I search this 504 North Jason, you can see that it has the city behind it. That's where a lot of your new layers you'll see don't have any kind of geocoding. So like the hydrants don't have anything right now. So if I wanted to add something to the hydrants, let me click on a hydrant so I can show you the different fields we can search. So like the hydrant ID does exist. So we can go to our hydrant. We can click inside here. And that's basically the pulling up this menu here. Otherwise, this kind of jumps around while I'm going to pull it back to the center. I'm going to add field, and we're going to search the hydrant ID. And then, so then I know when I'm searching, if I start typing something randomly, I'm going to put hydrant. There behind there. And okay. And we're going to do a rebuild real quick here. So now if I start searching for HSL dash, I can start seeing all these different hydrant numbers. I can scroll through and pick one and it'll zoom to it. So that's where you can set up these search suggestions and then save the settings to the layer. I know I feel like a broken record saying this, but that's the kind of stuff you can set up to kind of make the layer the highest value for the end users and for yourself. I mean, having these things set up is handy for you also. But a lot of times it's the editor is trying to create a layer that's useful to, for 20 or hundreds of people, not just for themselves. So it's nice to set some of this up ahead of time so they don't have to try to set it up later. A lot of times the viewer users aren't going to be as good at setting up some of these additional settings. You can set up the selectability. You can set that either way. Normally you're going to have it selectable, but you could force that to off, save settings to layer. When they add it, it comes in unselectable. That would normally be like your aerial photography. That's not normally on sync. We are starting to put some of our web hosted aerials on sync. So you may see one of those that comes in. Selectability should be turned off. Hopefully when I create those, I'm normally the one that creates those. So hopefully I remember to do that. The other thing that is kind of like a good practice, not maybe something that's so much the save settings a layer, it is saved there, is setting up your long labels. So we're going to our landmarks. Nope, bus stops. They're up here, up under base map. So if we go into our bus stops here and we go to our layer format, you're going to see right now the long label is just ID. So if we go to our index, go to our bus stops, you can see we have ID and location. If we do a locate all, just to kind of like see where all these are at, and on this left side, if we wanted to zoom to one of these, unless we know what the ID number is, we wouldn't know which one we're zooming in on other than based on the ID number. If we set up a long label to include, I'm just going to do a dash just for looks to location. So that'll be that field up there. And you could actually add extra text. So you could put like bus stops or something like that in here also if you wanted. Not normally something I do, but that is something you can do if you want to add some additional information in there that's going to show up on all of them. So I hit OK and close. So let me do a redraw. Do an index, bus stops. Now if we do a locate all, you'll see it actually has each location. So you can see like there's the Walmart, there's the Waffle House, there's a Dollar General, and you can actually then click on one of these. So like let's click on the Waffle House, which is out here. You click on that, zooms you into the bus stop at the Waffle House. The nice thing is for the long labels is that is also what shows up here. So that's your current feature listing. If we go back and let's take off the location, do a file save, and then we do a drop down here. Oh, sorry. Let me just click off and click back. You'll see that our current feature just shows one. So that's where it's important to set up your long label whenever you create a new layer. Hopefully, any layers that we've helped you create will go through a lot of this step. But if you create a new layer yourself, it's good to set this up to have something here that's useful because your current feature will be filled in more. Your locate all will be filled in more. But also, let me go and type this in. If you click on, like whenever we click right here, and we see this, that's what this is. The ABC Daycare and the daycare layer. That ABC Daycare is set up in the long label because there's only one feature in the daycare That's all we're going to see there. But that's where the parcel number you can see is just the parcel number. You could have the parcel name, you could have the owner name, you could do a lot of different things in your long label to make it so that whenever you click things, or like we double click here, that's what's going to show up here. So setting up the long labels is an important step. It helps making the map a little easier to use, helps things a little more spelled out, plain English. It's kind of the thing we like to make sure everything's easy to use that way. So one thing you can do if you are like, let's go back into our bus stops just because it's locked. The field lengths. So I talked about this a little bit in the previous section. But the ID, it's only going to be 2 characters long. You don't really need 36 characters. It doesn't really hurt a lot with small layers, but this does eat into the size of the actual file. If you have a big layer like the parcels, which let's look at now, you'll see there's lots of fields here, and there's different fields. And a good example is like the legal description. That's only 80 on here. This Cone County, they have their legal description like split into 2 pieces. And I don't know if 80 is quite long enough, but it's probably close. But sometimes that legal description could be over 200 or 300 characters long. You may need to expand that to be able to fill that in and have it all fill in. But you also don't want it to be 200 or 300 characters long on the map number that is only maybe 2 or 3 characters long. Because if you had everything set to 200, you would actually run out of space in the file. There is like an actual maximum of how many characters can be in the file. If you wanted to know how many fields, like kind of like a list of fields and how long and different things, you can hit this diagnostic information. And oh, I don't have a ports folder set up. Oh, you know what? It's probably opening wrong folder. Just open it up in Notepad. So this is the diagnostic report. It'll open up in Notepad normally. And this list, you can actually see there's more information up here. A lot of this stuff is about but it'll tell you like this is the projection, the layers in, the different scaling factor, and other information about the projection information, the file format, tell you some of that information. Most of that I don't hardly ever use. I mostly use this field usage area. This will show the map field, what kind of type it is, which most of this is going to be the same. Some of these, like that 04 is a yes/no field, and this private records is a yes/no. I just know what those fields are. It doesn't really tell you what the type is, but you can just be able to look that up, figuring it out. Mostly what I use this for is the max length and the used length. So if we scroll down here and look at our legal, was a good example. We have 81 available, but we're only using 68. So we could actually trim that down to save some space on the file. This isn't something that most editors or people are going to be needing to do. What I normally a lot of times use this for is whenever I look at these and I see that this like pin grantor is 51 and the length used is 50, that means I'm going to run out of space if there's anything longer. And that's what I would do a lot of times use this is look at what I'm using and say, well, I need to expand that a little longer so I don't want to run out of space while I'm editing. But that's something you can actually use to get some information about your layer if you're curious on those lengths and try to trim those down. That's something I do a lot of times whenever I do an import on a shapefile is I'll run that report and then trim things down just to make the layer as small and compact as possible. The other thing I will do as kind of a good best practice is this isn't something you want to do like all the time because there may be data in there that is actually relevant. But if you had some deleted data, and was it water meters? One of these I deleted something one time. But it's a good idea to, if you're trying to trim down a layer, try to simplify it, but also just to kind of clean up all of the extraneous accidentally deleted files, or there's duplicates, that there's like one that's actually placed on the map, one that's a duplicate that's in the database, but not actually placed on the map, is you can do a, actually, we can just lock like the parcels is fine. We can do a purge deleted records from layer. So that will, anything that was deleted with the delete tool, this tool here will get that out of the index. Like I say, it's not something you want to do like all the time. That isn't really necessary. But if you've been working on a layer, been doing a lot of cleanup, and you're like, hey, this is like exactly the way I want it. I'm ready to publish this to everybody. This is a good step just to get rid of any of those extra extraneous data. It helps compact the layer, makes it smaller, so that will make it sync faster up and down. That's the other nice thing about that. That's what some of these best practices, it's just nice to do these to make the end user have the fastest possible map. So, any questions on any of these best use ideas? I know I've kind of zipped through there, trying not to talk too fast, but had a lot to cover.
No questions as of right now.
Okay, so let's move on to our feature form. This is the kind of the fun thing that you can do with things. So I'm going to pull up. I think I was actually thinking about modifying like one of these and one of these. So let's pull up our daycare first. So right now we have our 3 links up here at the top for our daycare, and then we have a feature name. So let's add a couple more features or a couple fields. So daycare. We're going to add maybe like a contact name. Contact number. Address field. And then let's add a maybe like an emergency contact. Spell that right? So emergency contact. So let's say you've added those fields. We're got to do a file save, redraw. Sometimes the map won't let you select something you just modified, so you got to do that. So we'll do the contact name, John Smith, contact number, and address. I think that's 504 North Chasen Street. And then emergency contact. Let's give it another phone number. 8888. So this is the order that they came in automatically whenever we've like added these fields, and you can rearrange them. So I was going to show, so like, let's do a file save. If we click here, so that's the order they show up over here. And this is the order they show up in the field. If you want to rearrange the order, you can come into your layer settings, layer format. And let's say we want to move the emergency contact right up to the top, even above the feature name. So we can do that and hit OK. And close. Let's do a redraw. And if we click on our daycare, now the links are always going to be at the top, just so you know. And then the emergency contact shows up there. Then the feature name, contact number, and address. But if we open up the field, you'll see the emergency contact moved up here automatically for us because we haven't done any modifying of this. But if we've already modified this field, or we wanted to modify it further to put things in different orders or different locations, we can hit Modify Form Layout. And a lot of times what I'll do, the first thing I'll do is I'll maybe make this a little bigger to give me a little more room to work. And then let's say I want to put feature name over here. I want to put the contact name under there, and the contact number next to it. And I want to put the address, maybe just send it here. And you can see up here, it'll show you where those links are going to show up, just so you can like visually reference that. So we can right click and finish. So that was a right click in that gray area there, and finish. And these other ones, I just click and drag. I just click and drag to where I want them. So finish, apply these changes. Yes. So let's do a redraw so I can click on it again. And now you can see I've rearranged that form. So you can rearrange and make things go in different columns, different lineups. So one thing you can do is I want to make these line up a little bit nicer. So I'm going to make this a little wider. If you hold shift, you can click on two things. Then you can right click on the actual item and align, and you can align the left edges, right edges, top or bottom. So I'm going to do the right edges just to show it moving a larger area. And you'll see that it moved over and it lined those out. So I might do the same thing here. Align, and we'll do right edges again. And then this one, I don't really have anything to line it up, so I'll just line it up to this one too. Align. So that just moves it over there and aligns it. So you'll see how these aren't stacked very, very nice, and you wanted to maybe like even them up. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll move it up close to where I think it looks pretty good, and then you can select all three of them. And then align, and then you can do equal horizontal or vertical spacing. So we're going to do vertical spacing here. And that just kind of like evens out the spacing between those three, makes it look a little nicer. And again, if you wanted to move the order, like let's say you wanted to put the address first, you can just move the one out of the way, move these in. Now I'm just kind of haphazardly setting them up. I'm going to select them, do line right, and then align vertical. And that will set those up. Luckily, those kind of snapped into place already. Didn't really move a lot. But you can kind of do those kind of things. If you want to align these ones to the left, I'll show you what that looks like. So you'll see it lines up the box, not the extra little label that labels the field. Other thing you can do is you can move where that label shows up. So you can hit modify here. So the alignment left of field, you can go no label if you want to get rid of it completely. Sometimes you'll use that because I'll show in a second how you can add additional text boxes, and you might want a different type of text box instead of the built-in. You can go right of field, or let's do above field just to show you how that looks. So that one's above. I'm going to move this down a little bit. Modify and do this one above and okay. So now let's do finished and yes. Let's do a file save, redraw. I'm doing an Alt S and an Alt R on my keyboard if you want to know the shortcut I'm using. I use sometimes. But now you can see these are, the descriptions on the left, and now it's above. So you can play with that to make your form look nicer. The main reason I like to be able to change this around is to get things in the order that I want to see them. Whenever I pull it up, I'm like, first thing I want to see is emergency contact, then the address, then the contact name, and then the normal contact number could be over there. I could have put that below. You can move that things around. But moving these does not change this order on the left side. And that's just so, for your knowledge, but also the only way to change that is in the layer settings under the, that other area. That changes that order here. So you can move these around wherever you want. One thing to know is that this will still tab in the order. So you'll see how it jumps around. So if we start here again, emergency contact, and I hit tab once, it's going to go to feature name. I hit tab again, it's going to go to contact name. So it's going to go down in this order. So you'll sometimes find one your address layers, the way the address layer is ordered in our map to make the searching and some of the other backend features work, has to be ordered in kind of a non-standard, it messes with my brain when I read it, way. And so whenever you hit tab, that is why it jumps around, because it's going down the layer list, the feature list order that's set up there. So if that annoys you, you may want to move this address farther down because it's actually the bottom. So you might want it lower just so that it doesn't jump around. Some people that bothers, some people it doesn't. Just wanted to point out that it's kind of a gotcha on that. Another thing you can do with the layout is you can add text box or buttons. So let's add a text box just to show that. So text, I'm going to make this daycare name. And okay. And you'll see it starts out pretty small. I'm actually going to turn off the label on this daycare, the feature name one. I'm going to put this right above here. And this is where it takes a little trial and error to get this to work out exactly what you want. but the width and height is what you have to change here to set that box to be a little bigger. And then you can also change the size. So we're going to go to large, and height, let's go to, I think, 30 and 100. And I'm going to just make that a little bigger. That may not be quite big enough, but we will try it. So hit finished, and yes. Let's do a redraw and save. And one thing if you want to pull up the feature, if you click on here with this gray bar, it'll actually pull up the form. So if you have the, like if you clicked on a feature over here, you clicked on that and you want to pull up the form, instead of having to double click on the map again, you can click this gray bar and it'll pull that up. So it's another quick way to get to the feature form to do some editing or to look at the thing. So you can see my daycare isn't quite long enough. So we're going to do a modify form layout. And click on this guy and modify, and let's increase that to 500. And it might be a little too long for our sheet, so we'll make our page a little wider. And sometimes it will want to like scroll up a little too much. A lot of times I'll expand it just a little bit when I'm in here messing around, and it'll kind of like crop down to the space necessary. So nothing wrong with doing a little adjusting. Daycare, pull it up, and then now we can have daycare name, and that's where we can have a bigger label there than just the small labels that pop up. You could also have like instructions. You could have like, fill this in, or don't forget this. You could have little notes, whatever you want to do to add some labeling or any other text. Oh, do the opposite. So modify form layout. So now let's add a button. So button text can be pop-up high, and then we can have run, pop up. So this is going to be a little button, and it's going to pop up a little hi to just say hi to you. So we can click that. Back to our daycare, hop it up, pop up hi. So we click that, and then maybe it's pop-up window. I forget the command. But you could have a little something pop up. This is basically to run a command from inside the form. So this could be the same thing for our floor plans on and off. If we go grab that link, actually, we can do it from here. We grab the script. Turn that on, close, do the floor plans off. And modify form, change a button. So our command's going to be visibility on, and this can now say floor. Okay, so let's save that. Save raw. Go back to it here. Oh, see, I didn't expand my thing, so I have to scroll a little bit. I'll show you how to fix that. We can hit floor plan on. And because the map, I don't have that redraw, and normally you'd have to do a script or something to really make it work well. That's something we can help you set up. I'll just do a scroll on the map to show the floor plan turns on. So buttons can be used. You could link to a website with a button. You could run a command. You could do things like turning the features on and off, those kind of things if you wanted to have a button in here to do something instead of the links. So instead of the links up here, you can put this button anywhere you want on the form. So let's go back to modify. I'm going to go ahead and thing I didn't do is a lot of times I'll just scroll this down, make it a little bigger. It'll automatically crop it up to take up any space that's not needed. So there's floor plans. I can move this wherever I want. So I could put it way over here, put it up here. You can do the same thing with add hyperlink. So we can do our text. Let's just put WTH website and then run. And okay. So that's going to put our WTH website. It's the same thing as the text and everything. It just kind of defaults to a small. You can go modify. We can make this a little wider. Let's make it 70 wide. And then let's say I wanted that right there. So you could have the website for the daycare next to their contact, information. You could have a section. You could even do an add text to contact phone. And put that down here. Then you could put the contact number. Let's assume that's the contact website and the contact name. You can put that down there. And that allows you to just kind of place things where you want on the form to make it easier to use. So let's hit yes. Another redraw, open up our form. So now you can see our contact info, contact number, WTH website, which is just linked to our site, and then contact name. And then our button still up there. So that's some of the stuff you can do with feature forms. If you wanted to get rid of one of these things, you've added something. Keep hitting the wrong one. Modify form. So let's say we don't want this link anymore. We can right click, just hit delete. And it's going to be like, hey, are you sure? Yes. If you try to delete one of these, it's going to say, are you want sure? And then it's going to say data fields cannot be deleted. All other control types were deleted. So it won't let you delete a field that's actually that's actually part of the layer. But like this contact info that I created, we can delete it. And height of that box, that's just how it displays in the map. Everything. So if you made this height like, let's make it 70, and only made this 250. And I'm just going to bring it down just to make room for it so I can pick it up. And finished. And then yes. Should show. So you can see how even though the box is bigger, it didn't change the name, the size of the text, and it's just got that big gap now that is showing there. So, any questions so far, Leslie?
There's a couple. So with these changes that we are making to the feature fields forms here, are these changes going to be specific to this particular user, or does it change it for everyone when accessing this information on their map?
So this is saved in the layer. So whatever you make here is going to show for everybody's map automatically. So if you add a extra label or a link or anything like that, all of that is saved in the layer. It's synced through sync, and the people on the other end will see this.
So really, the people who own the layer should be the ones making these modifications,
yeah.
Not just everyone.
Yes, yeah, you would have to own the layer for this setting to save, basically, because as soon as you sync, it'll override it and you'll lose that most likely. So
yeah, we do have some. Oh, go ahead.
Basically, a lot of the stuff I'm trying to go over are things that just the person who owns the layer would want to do. I mean, most of the setup is done by the editor who owns the layer, and then once people receive it, they're just going to use it as is. So yeah.
Sure. And then we do have some newer editors who are joining us. They might be new to their position as well. I think you briefly mentioned it. Can you show where to walk through moving up and down the fields in that left pane, should they decide that order isn't good as is?
Yeah, so that is under your layer settings, and then like we're just going to do a right click, but you can also hit more, then your layer format, and that's where these are ordered. So if you wanted the emergency contact moved down below the feature name, you can just hit this up, down, move up and move down buttons here. If you want to remove one of these, like let's say we don't need the contact name, we don't want to have that anymore for whatever reason, we can just hit remove, and it's gone. Now, the nice thing is if you make a mistake in here and you're like, oh no, just hit cancel, and it didn't change anything. As soon as you hit OK, most of those settings, they're permanent You're not getting it back. There's no undo for that. So it's better to do a cancel and then redo some work than to completely mess things up. One thing on these fields, let's say I change this from address to property address. And let's say I change contact name to director. So we've got two fields. We've changed the name. It doesn't matter what order we change them in. That won't prompt this next window. But when I hit OK here, I didn't prompt me. Oh, it's because I didn't remove anything. Sorry. If I were to remove something, that's what. Let's remove the directory. So let's remove that. You're going to get this, or if you add a lot of fields, you're going to get this pop up here, this field mapping setup. It's basically saying, hey, you've removed. So there's the warning. Features records are about to be moved or copied from source location to destination location. So it's basically telling us that the source fields and the destination fields don't match anymore. So the emergency contact, that still exists. The feature name, that still exists. The director name, that doesn't exist. So right now, if I just hit OK, it's not going to go anywhere. It's not, it just, the data's lost. If we hit cancel though, then it'll basically tell us, hey, that nothing changed. We come back in here to the daycare layer. You'll see the director name's still there. So if you accidentally remove something, you hit OK, and it's going to give you like this one last chance to like not lose that data, or you maybe need to move it to another field because maybe I've added another field that is just contact name. And I want to remove director name. Instead of renaming it for whatever reason, I added a new one. I hit OK. Now it's like, hey, line these up for me. So contact, emergency contact's going to be lined up, feature name. Director name doesn't go anywhere, so I'm going to put that as contact name. And then contact number and property address. So now those will move those fields. It's like the fun worksheets you used to do in school where you had to line up the two lists. So it's kind of fun. Okay. Any other questions, Leslie?
We don't have any more in the Q&A. Again, we've got the mics open. If anybody should have any questions they'd like to ask in person, feel free to unmute yourself.
While we're waiting, I'll go ahead and show on the daycare layer that I've been playing with here. There's also, if you do your modify form layout, there's the option to do tabs. And some of our users, I'm sure, have like an NG911 layer. A lot of times when we deliver those, they have tabs. But maybe you have a layer that you want to do two tabs so that whenever they open up the form, they have the basic information, and then the second tab maybe has additional information that maybe they don't need every day, but it is just helpful to have. So if we right click and hit tabs, we can go new tab, and we're going to call this general. So this is now the general tab. So that's just the, and you could name it anything. I'm just giving it a generic name. Now let's go tabs and new tab, and let's do additional info. And okay. So we have our general tab, which just has the everything that's on the layer already. Then additional info right now is empty. So let's say we wanted to move the contact name. And we're going to go right click, we're going to right click on the thing, tabs, and then we're going to say we want to move selection to a different tab. So I realize that's real low at the bottom there. We're going to move that to additional info. And then I'm going to move their contact number also over there. So tabs, move selected to the additional info. And then why don't we fix this so then it maybe looks a little normal. So line those things up, and then we go back to our additional info. We'll see these came in, and maybe we want to just put these up here. Contact name, contact number. Maybe we want to change the back to the left. So those are lined up there. So now let's hit finished so we can see our changes here. So let's say someone is wanting to contact this place. They pull up the form. The left side here is going to show those tabs with the little plus and minus here. So it'll only show one or the other, just to kind of make that form not so big whenever you're looking at two. It's not times used for something like address layer where you have a whole bunch of extra fields, and that can help you be able to make it a little more manageable. But if we open up our field, we'll have our general, so we can have our daycare name, emergency contact, and property address. That's maybe the data that dispatch needs right away, right now, to be able to do something. If the additional info is maybe you just need to know who the director is and their contact number. So you can hide that behind this. It's not really hidden, but you can just move that into an additional tab to make it so then this field can just be just the basic information they need to be able to do something right away. Any questions come in while I was talking there, Leslie?
We did have one earlier. It's not on the topic of the feature form, but when you were placing the points earlier for those utilities for valves and whatnot, we had a question about, customizing those. Can you remind, since we might still have some new editors in here, where they can go to customize how those logos look?
So like the symbols.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so like my water meters, I have that little M, and then my valves, let me move that back up here. It's got the little kind of bow tie shape. Those are things that are out on our web library. I'll show you, there's a couple places to get things. Let's do our water line. Well, that's not really a feature point. Let's do our hydrants. So you can do a browse local libraries. And this is where you'll find some built-in different things in the map that have different features. I don't have a whole lot here because I reinstalled my map before the training, just so my map would be nice and clean and simple. But there's lots of different features normally here. We can probably go find one in my backup. So like this is one that's kind of a generic one that a lot of people have on their map. Just lots of different symbols here to do different things. But there's also the web library, which most of the time is more helpful. And that's where the meter and valve little icons we're using. So let's look at the meter one. So we'll browse web library. We'll scroll down here to our water utilities. And then we are looking at meters. So let's go to the meter. And then I've made a couple different options. So you can have a white background, blue outline, a WM if you want to be water meter. So you want to be able to differentiate between water meters and some other type of meter that you maybe still want blue, but you want to be able to see the differences there. And then I've got multiple sizes here. So you can go up to like this 28 pixel, makes it pretty big. So you can see how big those are. Normally I like the kind of like 16 to 20 range. So let's scroll back down to our water utilities, back into our meter. So I think I was using 16 or 20 before. I made a little 12 that's really small if you're just wanting to try to, maximize the size of them. Yeah, it looks like I was probably using a 20 before. So you can kind of play with the different sizes of those. If you need a icon and you don't have the ability to make it, reach out to us. We can help you build out little symbols for anything. Same thing, the valves are in that web library also. And you can use almost anything. Like if you find a picture online and you want to use, just like size it down to that 20 pixel size, and you can use that. Normally, whenever I try to create these, I try to make them like 2-color, try to pretty simple, but you can use basically anything. Anything else, Leslie? Anything else come in?
That was it for questions, unless you have anything else you'd like to cover.
I think that's everything. I feel like we've covered a lot today. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions on any of these specific things or anything else.
Yep. Thank you, Corey, for going over that valuable information to help our users become more familiar with features WTH has to offer within our Think GIS map. Just a friendly reminder to watch for that email with the survey link and the recording of what we learned here in today's session. Any input and feedback is greatly appreciated. You can also review the recording on our website by navigating back to the registration page where it will soon be posted. If for some reason after some time your company's firewall doesn't seem to allow the email to come through, feel free to reach out to a WTH staff member and we'll send you the links directly. Thank you for joining us today in our second extended webinar session. We hope you've learned from and enjoyed the topics we've discussed here today and are hopeful to see you attend future sessions. Thank you from your friends here at WTH Technology.